Hi, I'm Adam and this is TheUplinkPort, and in today's video we're going to be looking at and trying to break a bonded platform that is almost 18 years old. You can't buy it anymore, but it is still in use in many production networks, including that of Structured, of which I still have access to, and that platform is Sharedband. So whether you're into retro networking gear or just curious on how things work, stick around. Now, what is Sharedband? Here is the first part of a promotional video.
Sharedband can make your internet connection up to 4 times faster. But how? The answer's remarkably simple. We take your data and share it out, packet by packet, over multiple broadband lines. Then, we bundle it all up again at one of our aggregation servers and send it onto the internet.
And yes, there is more. I will throw a link to the original promotional video in the video description, but fundamentally Sharedband was its own unique platform. It didn't operate like any of the other bonding technologies. It didn't need MLPPP or anything like that. Sharedband was truly unique in that it ran its own aggregation servers, clients, you had a web interface. It was its own unique environment. We will have a look at that later on because, as I said, Structured still use it, although we only have 1 or 2 clients on it. I thought it would be a really cool way of saying goodbye to it by abusing the hell out of it. Granted, most of the web interface is broken and I need to try and fix that to try and get around what I actually want to do with this and pushing it to the absolute limit. But Sharedband is a really interesting product. Now, we will go into the hardware on this as well. I'll take the lid off, show you what's inside of this. There was many different versions of the Sharedband product from a CPE point of view, all the way from a Netgear DGN834, I think it was, all the way up to what they classified as a power router 2. This will bond 2 separate connections and give you 1 output. I have, if this all goes to plan, another 3 of these, giving us the ability to bond 8 individual connections together. And what am I going to do bonding 8 individual connections together? I can't believe I'm doing this. But we're going to bond EFM and see what we can get out of it. Now, these are 8 lines each, which hopefully should output into one of the power routers, which will give us 16 lines of EFM goodness. And in order to accommodate that, that was probably quite loud, I apologise. Zen very kindly sent over another 3 24-pair EFM SDSL line cards to go into the Zhone router or the chassis that we've got. And then I've got the joyous task of terminating 64 connections to get into all of these. But in order to do that, I need to overcome a portal issue which is preventing me from adding all 8 potential routers into one account. I have a legacy account. Unfortunately, the Sharedband platform isn't very well maintained, or if at all anymore. A load of certificates have expired on that particular server for internal communications. They fixed it once before. They have stopped responding to me at this moment in time and have done for a while, which is slightly annoying, but either way, I'm going to have a look at fixing it myself. If I can fix it myself and get the additional 8 lines added to it, or the additional 4, then we will bond all 8 EFM circuits together. We will do a proof of concept first and add, well, 2 of them to see if this is even going to work, because it is pointless me doing all of this if it just doesn't scale. I've never done anything on this scale before. I have no idea if Sharedband is capable of doing it. Sharedband is its own very unique and proprietary sort of system. I have no idea what runs on all of these. The CPEs, the boxes are running on BusyBox, and then the actual main aggregation servers and the NOC is running on Debian, but we'll get into that in a little bit later. Right, I'm going to show you what's inside those boxes, and then we will start this ridiculous, crazy idea. So this is the power router version 2. This is almost identical to version 1, it's just version 2 had 2 WAN ports on it and 1 LAN port, so you only needed 4 devices to bond 8 circuits. On the back of it we have a console port which you could get access to, 1 LAN port and 2 WAN ports. You have 2 USB 3 ports and DC power on the back, which from memory was 12 volts. On the front of it there are 3 LEDs. I cannot remember for the life of me what these do, and the documentation for this also doesn't detail it either, but from memory there was a power light which was flashing when it was booting, static when it was ready, and I believe the middle one may have been to tell you whether it had a WAN connection, and the other one may have been for LAN. Thinking about it really quickly, one of these might actually have been for identifying the node in which this was from 1 to 4, i.e. flashing once every second and then maybe once every 4 seconds for node 4 and anywhere in between. I honestly can't remember. Now, under the lid there is a PC engine. Sharedband were really good in that you could buy all of this hardware and build them yourselves, and they would just provide you the software. That went for all the routers in the range. You could buy the routers and then just put the software on them and flash them with them, and you'd be off to the races, assuming you have a Sharedband license. We used to do that. These are actually bought in from Sharedband. They also warranty them as well, which was nice. But when you're buying these in at scale, it was just easier to get them out of the box, plug them in, rather than have to build them, flash them, and then mess around with them. The board itself, version 2, has changed from what I recall on version 1. Version 1 had CF flash on it rather than a micro SD card. I don't recall it having mini PCIe or mini SATA, which is what these are. From a header point of view, we have GPIO, we have USB headers, obviously power. There's a 5 volt power header, SATA. There is an additional COM port, and then there are what would be reset and power buttons, obviously if this wasn't in this case. And there is, I believe, a reset button here. I can't remember if you factory reset it with that. I'm sure it's in the manual, but either way, that is what is inside. A very generic PC engine. In terms of spec, this has 4 gig of RAM, and I believe this has an AMD processor. So on the other side of the board was hiding a few surprises. Number one is there's actually 2 SIM card slots on this. There is the other side of the memory. There is an AMD processor on this. However, the text is so small I can't read it. If I remember, I will throw up a close-up on screen along with a chip that I cannot even pronounce. There are some pads here which I think are the same on the other side as well, which they are there. I'm assuming that was for testing or something like that. But other than that, there's not much on that side. The case itself acts as the heatsink, because there's a thermal pad, there's a big block of metal which is attached to the aluminium chassis, not aluminum, for all my American followers out there. However, I'm going to go and put all this back together and try and remember actually how to connect to all of it, because I know none of these are factory reset. They were in our e-waste pile. I don't know if they're running on routable addresses, whether VRRP is enabled, which is virtual router redundancy protocol, or what, or whether I have to factory reset those, or whether that's a reset button, whether I have to take these out and reflash them with the software. I don't know. Either way, this is going to be a journey in itself. So I'm saying, trying to work out why I can't connect to it. Oops. So with the device properly powered and armed with my notes I managed to find in our archive, I have got to the login page. Now, just as a what if, I did manage to find the Sharedband documentation for configuration on these in case I had to wipe it all. But interestingly, this is for the Power Router 2 Plus. Now, I thought and I said that version 2 was the last one that I recall them building. It turns out they released a model after we stopped buying these. And this, according to the screenshots, has 3 WAN ports and 1 LAN, so 4 Ethernet ports in total. And that makes sense because I did see a 4-port version on LinITX when I was going back through the specs for the one that we had. But apparently there is a 3-port version out there. Now, I don't have that one, unfortunately. It would make this potentially a little bit better on scale, but either way I'll take 4 over 8. Now, logging into this is going to be the next thing. I'm pretty sure it's one of our standard passwords, or not at the time. The only other one it could be is that, which thankfully it is. Otherwise we would have been resetting this because I don't know what the others would have been. I haven't logged into one of these in a while. I may have logged in to change a few things on systems a couple of years ago, but I've not set one back up. So I'm going to familiarize with myself with the interface, and we might as well do this together. You've got settings, which I think is change your settings. You've got LAN settings. So you've got the device's LAN address. DHCP, because these could just act as a router as well, dish out DHCP, and then the VRRP addressing would be set up there. You'll note that this is different because the way we used to have these set up was every device had its own unique LAN address, which was on 172, and then VRRP was separate because in the portal, which we'll show you later, you could actually basically forward on an entire IP address down to the Sharedband cluster, so you didn't have to do any port forwarding further upstream. Anything that would be presented to that IP address would be presented straight to the firewall, and the only port forwarding you'd need to do is on the firewall itself. Going back into settings, you've got the WAN configuration. Now this, I can't remember who this was set up for at the time, but you could set this up for, apparently this had a static IP address. I have no idea. Dynamic IP, I don't actually think worked. Static IP and then PPPoE, and then your MTU values. That was it. That was as simple as the configuration got in that instance. Sharedband service configuration, you'd set up the site name, password. You had a community ID, which we'll get into a bit in the portal. The aggregation IP address it was going to, the nodes, and this was interesting as well. You couldn't have this as node 1 and 2. There was a reason you had to alternate these. So this was 1 and 3, and then if you were doing 4 lines, the other one would be 2 and 4. You couldn't have node 1 and 2 or 3 and 4 on the same device. It just didn't work. I can't remember why. Administration, all that good stuff. Status, I think, showed the unit status. Yeah, so you have the connection status, and then it went and sees, well, whether it could see the aggregation server, and then what routing mode it was in. Now, routing mode, I think, was whether you were routing an entire block down or whether this was acting as a NAT. I can't honestly remember. Number of live Sharedband routers. So this would also go and talk to the others in the cluster as well and see which ones were online and which ones weren't and which ones could use the connections. Again, aggregation server ID, community index, and you could go through to the WAN status. Okay, which showed you Ethernet, whether it was up or down, gateway address and so forth. On PPP, I think it came up with the PPP details. Diagnostics, you could ping out, you could trace out. Obviously, this has not connected to anything, so none of that's going to work. So what I now need to do is configure this. The account I've got for this is an old legacy one that can do up to 4 Sharedband routers. That's not an issue at the second because I only have 2 EFM boxes. If this works, then we'll scale it up. But there is a bug in the knock actually for this second, which basically means I can't add any more than 4 because there is an issue with the back end and the database connection and certificates that I may have mentioned earlier on. So I need to try and resolve that if we get this working at all, and go from there. So I'm going to go and program this. We also need to set up a EFM box as well and get that online, which I haven't touched the Zhone for months. I haven't touched anything. I don't even know if that still works, to be completely honest with you. So let's go and tackle that now and see if that works, and then we can build all of this up. So the Exchange cab has not really changed much from last time I did this. Obviously we have the power supply. I've still got the rectifier to go in at some point. We have underneath that the adver, which I'm hoping is still very much configured for everything in here. If not, I'm going to scream. We have the ZXL IP Express IS5106M, which is our ADSL and VDSL DSLAM. And then right at the bottom is our Zhone, or Zhone, however you want to pronounce it, EFM DSLAM. Now, I've only got 2 cards in. I've only got 1 cable feeding. I do have the ability to take these cables in from the ZXL and plug them in as well. Obviously, I have these additional line cards to go in as well. I have fortunately got a spare just in case one of them doesn't work. Those 2 I believe do, but again, I've not tried the bottom one. It's only ever been the top one. So hopefully we have a spare if we need be. That should give us all 64 lines, and God help me if this does work, because I have got to connect all 64 lines. The problem I have, and if I'd been better prepared, I only have 3 Chrome strips. I have ordered or tried to order more on eBay. However, the seller is having none of it in giving me a discount. So for the minute, I'm stuck with 3, and I will have to work out what I'm going to do. We have booted and we had 24 lovely magical musical relays click on that top card, which is active. So everything is up on that. I have found another telco cable while I have been rummaging around. So thank you to Mark over at Zen for sending me that originally when he sent me a box full of goodies. That now means I can get 64 pairs up to the bench. Potentially, I'm thinking too far ahead at a minute. Either way, it's irrelevant. Fan tray is still running with its bodge of 4 fans wired in series, I think it is, to get the 48 volts down to 12 volts, so I can still record around this without it being a nightmare. Then have sent me over another fan tray, so I can hopefully put something a bit more permanent together. Right, let's go and wire up one of the Hatteras's. Why does it feel like I have done this before? That's because I have. I've terminated these punch down strips so many times that I have lost track and ended up literally ripping them off weeks or months later because I've moved things around, the cabinet's changed and they don't fit through the holes in the cabinet. It has been soul destroying. That being said, I can only terminate 3 anyway. The eBay seller that I was negotiating with to get some more has gone quiet on me. So I've done what I should have done in the first place and just reached out in Discord, and as always one of the community members, in this case Dan, has come back and said as soon as he has some free from a project he's doing he will send them my way. So Dan, thank you very much. As always, if you're not involved in Discord, the link for Discord is in the video description. It's not behind any paywalls. It is fully open to every member of the community who wants to come and join. It's a fantastic place to be. I am so proud to be part of a community like this. It's great. We all have a laugh. We do movie nights. We do catch-up calls. It is a great place to be. So if you're not involved, go and get involved. The link is in the video description. I am going to go and punish myself by terminating all of these. In theory, I only need 1 pair because that's all the EFN needs to run to be able to test this, but I might as well just go for broke, do all of them, and I will see you in a bit. Okay, after a lot of messing around, and you really didn't want to see me putting this together, I have 8 lines back in an EFM bond. Now, I had forgotten that when I was punching all these down, this is a 25 pair cable. I had forgot it is only a 24 port card. So port number 1 on this doesn't actually connect to anything. I'd forgotten about that from the previous videos. I'd also forgot that pair 9, which is not pair 9 on here because the other end of the plug is reversed, so this is actually 24 and then works its way down. That port is buggered, it doesn't work, so I've had to jump over a pair to get that working. That I get the feeling I'm going to come across quite a bit as we start to build this out, in that there's going to be ports that simply don't work. Now, it's taken me so long to put this together that Dan has very kindly sent me over more chrome strips. lots more chrome strips, which I need to terminate. Oh, I've actually missed one. There's another one there. So I now actually have the ability to put all this together, which is great. I've also got ahead of myself and started buying more EFM Hatteras boxes. Dan very kindly sent me over his 2 as well, which are here. So Dan, thank you very much for that. This is one I bought off of eBay, which has its mounting bracket. I've got another one coming as well, and there's 2 others on order to give us 8. I don't actually know whether we're going to need all 8. I don't even know if this is going to work. I'm behind on the video, so I'm kind of just going full board and going straight into it. So when all this is finished, I won't be keeping all of these. The 2 will be going back to Dan, and the 6 that I have bought, I would imagine 4 of them will be going on to Discord for anyone that wants them for the cost of shipping, even if it's to mess around with, have a play with, have a look into them. You're more than welcome to, as I said before, jump into Discord, but there is a community buy, sell, giveaway section in there. Right, I am going to go and terminate all of these, of which you don't need to see me doing that, and then I'm going to try and get as many of these connected as I can. And then we're going to connect into the Sharedband stuff, or I might connect the Sharedband stuff first before I go and connect all of these up. I honestly don't know. Either way, I'm going to go and terminate these first and move on. Hello, voiceover Adam here. Clearly I didn't have my receiver on or lav mic or a combination of the 2. And annoyingly, I remember spotting this after I did it and I thought I re-recorded it, but clearly I didn't hit record on the camera because this is the only piece of footage I have for this. Either way, it is what it is. I can't really remember this because I'm going back through editing it almost like a week and a half afterwards. I vaguely remember talking about how oh no, for this section, the cables, I terminated 25 pairs onto their respective cone strips, but I hadn't then taken the 5 remaining pairs from another cable and terminated it onto the bottom cone strips. So in effect you'd split the 2 cables over those cone strips. I wanted the cone strips separate per cable because the idea was I will reuse all this at some point in the future into their own DPs without having to take the pairs off that I've merged between cables, so it was nice and simple to move on at a later date. Here I think I was talking about the configuration on these devices, that the top one's already configured, obviously the bottom one isn't, and I need to move the configuration over from the top one onto the bottom one, which I would then have to mirror across the rest of them as well. Obviously I needed to test to make sure the first one still worked, and obviously then work out how the configuration works for the rest of them, because I initially didn't set this up. Brad set the initial Ethernet side up on the EFM DSLAM when my mind was melting previously, so there was that. I think I was talking about the patrons at this point to say thank you, which I have now done at the end of the video, but irrespective, thank you to the patrons for enabling me to do this. If it wasn't for you guys, then I wouldn't be able to spend money on these stupid projects. But anyway, right, I'm going to pass you back over to past Adam. Good news, the original box does work. I do get an IP address when I'm plugged into it back across the core, so all of that is working. Now, in the original video, a lot of you will probably remember the struggle and hassle I had getting this programmed via CLI. I knew none of the commands, knew nothing as to how any of this needed to be set up, but we did eventually get there. After that video went live and John got hold of a box, he took great pride in telling me, you do realize there's a web interface for these, and there is a web interface for these. You have to program it. It's not on by default. Well, I think for his, it may have been from the conversation I recall, which is how he stumbled across it. For mine, they haven't been. You've actually had to go in and enable it. And it's actually what this particular line is here. Now, I don't know whether this line is going to cause issues with DHCP passing across on this because I've got that interface configured. I don't know yet. I'll find out shortly. Well, I say I'll find out shortly. I've already got a fairly good inkling because I'm not getting an IP address come back through from it, but that could also be because of the bond groups that are set up on here. Now I've deleted 26 and replaced it with EFM2, which is for router 2. Bond group 25 does work. What I am going to do is swap over the pairs physically on the device and see if the new Hatteras with the web interface actually gets a DHCP address using a known bond. If it does, then it points to the configuration on the Zhone. If it doesn't, then it points to configuration on the Hatteras. So I'm going to go and have a play. Okay, so the problem follows the bond group, not the Hatteras, which is good because it means I can have the web configuration set up and it doesn't interfere. Annoyingly, this means the problem is on the DSLAM and with the bond groups, and I now need to go and do some digging and work out how bond 25 or whatever it is set up. Yes, I'm back. Yes, we have an IP address, and yes, it is the same one that we had previous, but the MAC address hasn't changed, so the DHCP server has just renewed the same address. That's absolutely fine, but I can assure you we are plugged into the other Hatteras box and everything is working as it should be. Now, I did end up having to grab another laptop for testing, just in case there's some weird caching issue going on, but it turns out that wasn't the case. It was actually the bond group that was at fault. So going through the DSLAM, under the uplink bridge, here's the Ethernet port. We're untagging everything that goes out. That's absolutely fine. I've missed this multiple times purely because of a drop down. In connections, it defaults to the MX up 4G copper, which I believe is the management card. In there, you can drop it down to SHDSL bond, which when you do, brings up the bonded groups. I've forgot what they're called already. What are they called? Bond groups. Anyway, you can select the bond groups you set up. 26 had nothing assigned to it. 25 did. It was a transparent untagged port using that particular bond group, which was going off to the other interface. I've literally recreated that for 26, and as soon as I recreated it for 26, then it went out of the interface. I saw the DHCP request and it came in on the laptop. So we now have two working devices with DHCP being passed across the network. Everything is set up. Let's go and configure the Sharedband router for 2 circuits, hopefully get that working. I don't know how Sharedband's going to react with having the same WAN IP address on both. Never done that before. That may also be a challenge. I may end up having to put these on public IP addresses. Right, one hurdle at a time. We are ready to start configuring all of this. I have no idea if this is going to work. This is going to be behind NAT, which in theory should be fine. I don't know. I have no idea how Sharedband is going to react to the same boxes having the same external IP address. Never tried this before. They've always been direct PPPoE or PPPoA connections. Obviously, this is Ethernet. We need to set all of this up. I can give you a quick overview of a portal. I can't go into too much because there's still some bits that are still live. Although everything on here is dead, it is still live at the second. Fundamentally, Sharedband is its own unique aggregation platform. The server runs on Debian and the devices, CPs, the power routers run on BusyBox, but you could use them on Netgears, Linksys, anything like that. They'd give you a firmware for you'd flash it and you'd have a very similar menu to this. It varied slightly per CP, but overall you put the same details in. Now, We invested into the Sharedband platform, which means we have our own NOC, our own aggregators. We have 2 aggregators, however, one of which is turned off because we don't use it anymore. There is only one turned on with the NOC. In the actual system itself, you can go and set up many customers, and you can bond up to 8 lines per customer. The overall view is, as you can see, you have the server you're connecting to. You have a community ID. Resequencing was great if you were using lines that had various latency. This would enable you to actually put in a, if I say yes to this as an example, basic, you could actually add a latency into everything. So if you had one line at say 10 milliseconds and one line at 16, you could set roughly 20 milliseconds per line. It'd add additional latency to them to give you a better bonding experience. Under service requirements, obviously status live, you could suspend it for billing and so forth. Lines you're bonding can use SMS, so you could get alerts if particular routers went down, and then you could set usage limits. There was a 250 gig unlimited. We never set any of that. You then have the amount of IP addresses you want to configure per customer. Typically it was 1. In this case, this account had 3 because there were 3 other customers beyond the back end of this, each of which had their own IP address. You've then obviously got the customer details. Now, when you log in to said customer, you get a completely different overview. You log in, you get your details for your account, your usage, your upload, your download, statistics, IP address, general overall account information, because you'd need this to configure this. Sharedband used to sell this direct as well. Status, you had status of the routers that were online, the latency. Obviously we've got nothing. This is only showing 1 router, which is odd in itself. Visibility, and this is showing 4. I'm not worried about it in a minute. And you can see the matrix as to how they can all see each other. Auto diagnose, it would run through and give you an understanding of anything that was potentially wrong with the setup. You had line health, so you had average disconnection, latency loss. You had performance of each line, which doesn't work at all. That is one bug in the portal still. I have fixed the other one, more on that in a minute. Uptime statistics, usage statistics per line, event logs, which is now actually working now. I fixed the other bug. It would run performance tests on each line, and it would use these to calculate the bonds per line. So unlike MLPPP, that would reduce you down to the lowest line. So if you had one at say 5 and the others at 10, you'd get 4 times 5 rather than 3 times 10 and 5 to give you 35. And then obviously your historic graphs, which there aren't any, and historic table, which there aren't any because this hasn't been used for a very long time. Outside of that, you've got your configuration. So you've got your router, so you can do your events in if there was an issue, one going up or down. IP management is where things got interesting. Generally, you had a default address, which is where if you'd set anything off to, so this would be a NAT address. However, if you wanted to route individual IP addresses down, you could to their own unique IP addresses you assigned locally on the Sharedband platform. So you'd give a firewall a local IP address, and then you could forward down an entire IP address to that IP, and traffic coming in and out would appear from that IP address, no port forwarding. When it wasn't set up like this and it was set up as a default allocation, then you'd have to do port forwarding. And if you had this one, like for example, this one hasn't been added, then you could actually add it in. I can't remember exactly how you do this. It's been such a long time. Oh, you can add it as a default outgoing address or fixed allocation. So fixed allocation is where you're forwarding it off, and default outgoing is where obviously it becomes your default IP address. We already have one, don't need one. I will tidy this up before we go through. Support, surprise, it's us, and then admin was changing username and passwords and so forth. Now, the issue we had with all of this was that the back end wasn't talking to each other. Everything on here communicates with the aggregation server and the NOC via a load of back-end communication with the community IDs and so forth. Every single time I made a change in here, I would simply get unable to talk to proxy, or I would just get a timeout, or something was going on. A couple of years ago, we experienced this, raised it to Sharedband, and they did fix it. However, we never got told what it was. A year later, it cropped up again to the day. So I suspected it was a certificate issue. Now, I was able to log in and go back through the history of commands, and eventually they came to the same conclusion. It was a certificate error. However, this became a bit more complicated because This certificate had a 10-year life expectancy on it, or a 10-year renewal on it. That had expired completely, to the point where in the logs between the aggregation server and the NOC, it was simply coming up saying that this basically was the first time it had been run. It hadn't been set up. There was nothing configured in the background, anything like that. We had to regenerate certificates. We then had to import them back and forth between machines. That wasn't enough. It turns out that the database that Sharedband runs in the background also keeps a local copy of the path for that file, as well as the checksum for it, as well as various other backup locations for that. And if the files don't match, then it will automatically restore files because it'll assume they're corrupted. There was an issue with a lock file, I think there was, as well, as to how it was generating other bits on the server. It was a nightmare. It took me 6 hours to get it fixed, and that was with the help of Claude actually going through some of the log information to point me in the right direction. This platform I know very little about, and it's been a very long time since I've dug into the background of it. I now know an awful lot of how this works under the hood, but the good news is it is now working. I can go in and select, in theory, all 8 lines, and we do actually then get all 8 appear on here as well. They should appear in the list when I do this. 8 there, and then over on here we should now see 8 as well, and I think under visibility also 8. Yes, I believe they only appear on here when you connect them. I can't remember. I don't know if there's still an issue. There is another account that I'm going to use that has 4 lines already on it. Although I don't know if I want to touch that one to see if I have the same issue. We'll run with this one. We'll see how far we get. I'm going to go and connect all this in the background. Fingers crossed, everything goes green. Ignore the wonderful chaotic mess. It's only going to get worse. Turns out line 2 on here isn't Ethernet 1. This is Ethernet 1. This is mislabeled, which has caused me quite a bit of time trying to work that out. So yeah, as I just said, it turns out that Ethernet 1 on here, or WAN 1 Ethernet 1, isn't line 2. Does that make sense? It's mislabeled on the router. Either way, now I've got that sorted, we have an active connection. This is actually connected to Sharedband. I haven't tried this bit yet to see if that's coming in. Router 1 is showing up, and that's all I would expect, although I might have expected router 3 to be showing up indirectly. Although does that need to be? I honestly can't remember how this works. Either way, router 1 is online. Now, why don't we see if this actually works or not? In order to do that, I'm going to load up this. I have got everything on my Ethernet card for my laptop currently set up and configured to the VRRP addressing. I can't remember if this is going to work with a default IP address or default outbound address on Sharedband with this setup, or whether it has to be part of the local IP range. We're going to go and find out. So we are going to close all of that. We are going to disable that. That's going to trigger that to pop up. Wi-Fi isn't connected. Apparently we still have an internet connection. Let's go and load what is my IP. Well, that's already a good sign. That is coming up as the IP address for the EasyBand IP. I think it was it this one? I can't even remember. Where am I going on here? Configuration IP manager. It is 12.112.9 even. That is cool. Okay, so it is working behind that. That's one good thing. I suppose the other thing we need to look at is a speed test. Now, in theory, I should be getting around 40 meg on all of this. This adds a load of MTU overhead, so I might need to adjust that. Although in theory with this, it should be fine at the minute. Again, I can't remember. Should be getting around 40 down, which we basically are. Okay, that's not a surprise. This is working as intended, in that he's working with one line through one EFM circuit, and we're basically getting the 40 meg throughput on it. So it's working with one. The question is this going to scale with two? And for that, I'm going to have to go and plug the other Hatteras into the other side of it, connect that up, and see if it works with two with the same external IP address. I'll be back in a minute. I'm almost scared to click view status. The second line is plugged in. Once all this is, if this works, I will go over it with the state. Let's see if we've got two active. Number of live Sharedband routers, 1. Oh, of course, that's this device, not the accessible WANs. Okay, so then I'm guessing going over here will tell us router 1. I was expecting router 2 or router 3. That's generally how this works, in that there would be, this is what this identification here was for under the service configuration 1 and 3. Now I'm confused. That one's active. Is right, let's save that and try again. Much time has gone past because I got distracted by a phone call from Zen and discussing hardware. There might be something like this on the horizon. I'm not entirely sure. Either way, stay tuned, get subscribed, all that good stuff, because I have no idea what I've just agreed to. Anyway, I haven't seen how far we got with the page that I've misplaced. There we are. I have no idea if it's going to show 1, 2 or anything like that. Let's load it. We're seeing 2. We've got 2. That means we should have 1 and 3 on here. We do. I have no idea if this means it's going to actually bond, because same external WAN IP address, unless it's doing some form of funky connection tracking. We're still at 40. I was expecting more. Lots more, to be honest. This is somewhat disappointing. I don't know if this is because it's got the same external IP address, and normally each router would have a different one. I don't know if it's getting confused from that point of view, or the other one might not be connected. Looks like it. Right, further testing is required. Okay, things have escalated slightly. Also, problems have started to occur in the form of power distribution. This is going to consume an awful lot of power sockets as I progress with this, something I hadn't really taken into consideration. Either way, both Hatteras boxes, happy, okay, online. 2 Sharedband boxes. Top one was programmed. I've actually programmed a second one now, which I haven't recorded, but it's programmed in the same way. It's just 2 and 4. I initially thought that maybe something was funky was going on with the fact that this has the same public IP address for both of these, and Sharedband didn't like it. From what I can see on the back end, it doesn't really care. It's tracking the individual session IDs, so it shouldn't be an issue. But the speed tests are generated from the local speed tests on the platform. So it'll run speed tests, work out what speeds are per line, and then use those values to be able to do the bonding. Now, they obviously were incorrect because this was based on a setup that no longer existed. However, every single time I ran a speed test, line 2 would just outright not report back speed. So I've come over here, I've set this up with 2 routers, connected them together, go over it in a little bit. But what I have found out is with pairs 5 to 8 connected, there is a ton of packet loss and high latency. Unplugging that, everything on this one seems to then work, go away. So something is amiss with 5 and 8. I haven't seeing whether that makes any difference in terms of speed, I was literally just unplugged this one, left it on with this, and I was getting an awful lot of said packet loss and latency. I'm plugging 5 and 8, that cleared. So my assumption at a second is that has sorted it. So let's go and check. Okay, so back over here, line 2 is now reporting a speed, which line 3 would have done as well when I was running these tests. However, there was so much packet loss and latency that the test just was never completing. So lines 1 and 2 are there. This is only obviously at half speed because only half the pairs are connected. But is it going to make any difference to this? We should see around 60 down and 60 up. Why are we only seeing 20 down? What is going on? Nothing is ever simple. Nothing. And again, that's about the same. They're all plugged in. I can see them bonding. I can see all the lines flashing away. Right. More fiddling, more guessing, more playing. Back in a bit. I am starting to think that this is all down to the external WAN IP address. In the back end, it does seem to be tracking things properly, but there is this warning about some EasyBond routers may have been connected to the same WAN or internet connection, preventing the service from operating correctly. I cannot remember if that warning is just on the assumption that it thinks that there are two Sharedband routers sharing the same FTTC connection. Obviously, this isn't the case. There's two physical EFM circuits connected separately that are just sharing the same external IP address. So that warning technically doesn't apply if it's looking at it from that point of view. However, if it is looking at it from the point of view that it needs separate IPs per device to do the bonding properly, then yes, absolutely, this will cause a problem. I've never tried it like this. I don't even know if it's going to work in the way I want it to. In theory, it should do, because yes, the EFM's already bonded, but it's presenting it as an Ethernet connection that you don't see that bond on. It is a transparent bond. So going into the Sharedband boxes should still theoretically work. It'd just be like bonding multiple Ethernet circuits together, which this is capable of doing. But I am sort of running into brick walls at the minute. I think what I'm going to do is go to bed, have a think, and work out what I'm going to do, because I can get additional IPs down here. In fact, I've already got additional IPs down here with the DSL stuff. However, I don't want to break that. So I don't know whether I route down another /32 and then on the BNG or the router board that we've got, push that down to the private IP address and then set up a routing map on the MikroTik to then shunt all traffic coming back from that line IP address back out on that public IP address. That would then present this from a different address, and maybe that might work. I just don't have the mindset to configure that tonight without breaking stuff. So I'm going to go have a sleep and come back in the morning. I lied. I couldn't let this go. I was tidying up and something was just nagging at me to try this. So I've stayed up way longer than I should have. However, you'll note that we no longer have a warning about this being on the same IP address. And if I go into status now, both of these routers are independently identifying themselves on different IP addresses. One is 118.1 and 118.2. I have done some one-to-one mapping on the BNG to pass the traffic out on different IP addresses and return it on to the local addresses. Net result is they both have their own external IP address now. The speed test has been completed, and I am pleased to report we have a bond on the downstream. Upload, not so much. I don't know what's going on with that at the minute. I've made some other changes as well to this. I've also set up the VRRP addressing to be within the same subnet. Not that that should make any difference anyway. Something odd is going on. It's still reporting different MTU values, but that might just be because this is an old account and line 4, which it's expecting but can't see, may still have an old value in the database. Either way, it shouldn't interfere with this whatsoever. I can mess around with resequencing and a few other things. It's just weird because normally when this happens on bonded FTTC that we do is because we haven't sorted out the speed mappings on the reverse end, but all of this is here, so I'm confused. Unless there is still a fault on pairs 1 to 4 with that EFM circuit that's causing something. However, the ping test that I've had going out doesn't seem to suggest that, so I'm confused. It's been such a long time, I can't remember if I even came across this when we had Sharedband and what to do to fix it. Honestly, don't know. So I think tomorrow I will scale this down to just one line on each EFM cluster and see if it bonds both of those, or whether we're down to one on that. Don't know. Either way, I am now going to bed. I'm going to end on a good note. I will see you in the morning. I don't seem to be able to give in before I go to bed. I've got the upload. I've managed to kill the download now. I'm basically just messing around with settings that I forgot even existed. This is an old account and it was originally set up for FTTC, and there was a load of manual adaptation in there. So I'm going through and removing it and setting things up again. And we seem to be making progress. And ironically, we're doing it on the BT server. Maybe that's an omen. Let's change it actually to structured. Let's see how this runs and see if this makes any differences to a different host. No, what? I don't even know now what I've done to drop this. That's Sharedband was very temperamental at times, and this just proves it. The upload's there. I mean, that's for. I mean, that is actually correct. That is the 60 meg because it's 40 meg on one and then 20 on the other. So that's basically bang on. I just need to work out what's going on with the download now. Now I'm going to bed. Now I'm happy. We are there. That is the best that I can get with this. We seem to have lost 8 meg on the upload. I don't know why. I've gone back through all the settings I had previously and put them back as they were, and it's still the same. So I can only assume it's just background traffic on Windows 11. Now, all of this was controlled by the line settings, which if I'd gone into the admin tab earlier, and just rather than just assume that it was to change the password, I would have remembered that there's all these line settings in here and waitings and so forth, which all need to be changed. The waitings are controlled dynamically based on the speed test, i.e. In reference to the speeds. So i.e. 128 is full, and then because this is only roughly half, it's a bit more, of course it's about half of 128. So it balances the lines based on the waitings, and then line settings, you've got speed settings, which real-time or scheduled, adaptation method, which was on dynamic, I've changed to fixed, but I've been through all of them. Dynamic you can also control as well. Basically, this changes the bonding on the fly. I don't know in terms of what values these are, whether they're milliseconds or seconds. Either way, fixed is best. Resequencing was always off anyway, and the heartbeat timeout is just to control the Sharedband services to whether the line's dropped and how long to wait before it then takes that connection out of service. But it is working. It now means we can scale this ridiculously in theory. I have no idea where the point of diminishing returns for all of this is going to be. Either way, I'm really happy. I am actually now going to go to bed. I'm going to turn all this off. I'm going to save all the config on my BNG and the access router that are sat behind me that you haven't seen. I've done all the config on to get all the IP addressing correct for this before I forget. And then tomorrow we will start off with a time lapse, me building all of this. I am still missing a couple of Hatteras boxes. They haven't turned up yet, but I'll build what I can. I'll build all the Sharedband stuff, and then we will test this and see what its absolute limit is. Okay, we are in a position where we now need to put these additional line cards in here. Now, I have been putting this off for a little while, not because putting the line cards in here, removing all these connectors around is hard. It is because patching all of this is going to do my OCD in. Now, these line cards are 24 ports each, which means you can get 3 bond groups per card. Perfect, fantastic. However, there is already a port on the top card which doesn't work, which means one of the bond groups has already ended up on the second card, or will end up on the second card by one pair. I have no idea if the pairs on the second card or ports on the second card work, whether we're going to have the same issue, which is then going to end up knocking them down. I need to work out a way to easily be able to build all the bond groups, if I can get my words out, and patch them in and make them work. Because the annoying thing is, if I build all the bond groups and it turns out there's a pair that doesn't actually work on one of these cards, then I've got to move the bond groups around, which in itself isn't difficult, but you have to build all the bond groups literally one after the other. So it then means I've got to knock all the bond groups down by one and reassign all the port members, and it's just going to be fiddly, and my mind can't cope with that at a minute. So we're going to do the easy thing, he says, squashing all the cables and put these line cards in. Now, the other interesting thing on this is why are you not going? Why are you being difficult? You should just go in. Why not go in? There we go. I have no idea why not go in. Anyway, that card is now in. Calling on this is going to be an interesting one as well, simply because I modified this fan tray to accommodate all the fans running at 12 volts and a lower airflow, because this is quite noisy with all the fans in. It's like a Blue Peter moment. Here's one I made earlier. Zen very kindly sent me a spare one over to modify. But at 48 volts, this thing is, I can't work around it. It's too noisy. It's very similar to VHP. So I don't know what cooling is going to be like. I also don't know what power is going to be like either, because this is still on the mainframe communications DC power supply. That one went in easier than the other one. Which is on a 3.1 amp fuse. So I have no idea how much how much current this is going to draw when it turns on, and I have no idea whether we're going to blow a fuse. I'm sure we'll find that out as well. Also, Adam can't math as well, because I already had one line card. I only need 3 to do this. I got an extra one from Zen as a spare, so I actually asked for 3. It now means I've got 5, but this one actually doesn't have the pegs on it for the connector. Not that that means too much in the grand scheme of things for all of this, but yeah, I kind of over-ordered by one card. I'm sure it'll end up in here at some point. Not that I plan on using all the pairs that this can actually deliver, other than what we're doing today. Right, they are all in. I will tidy them up later. Let's turn this on and see whether anything blows up. No, and we haven't blown a fuse. Load of clicky relays. Right, while that's booting, I'm going to go and start punching down all these pairs, I think, trying to make note of where they are as to what cards they're going into, build other bond groups, and then plug everything into the Hatteras and see what syncs and what doesn't sync, and fingers crossed all the rest of the ports on this work, and if they do, it's going to make my life a damn sight easier. Right, I'm going to go and start a time lapse, and then I'll join you back at the computer. We have some retro wave on in the background. I have my list of ports that I'm aiming to get this lot patched into. Let's crack on. Well, I wish I could say that that was easy. I ended up doing that twice. If you think something's going wrong, stop and check. I ploughed through that because I knew that was going to be quite a long time lapse. And in doing so, forgot that pair 1 was not to be used because it wasn't connected to anything. So that then ended up knocking out the sequence. And yeah, I ended up double punching some terminals in some places as well. And it got to the end and I thought, well, I'd spotted it. And as you could probably see, I then jumped onto the other crone strips and moved further along, thinking I had sorted it and I could just adjust the other ones after I finished the time lapse. It turned out I had completely miscalculated and cocked everything up, and also not put my phone on silent by the looks of things. So I now need to configure the zone. I need to bring all these cards into service. I need to create all the bond groups. I need to set them all up. I need to add them all to the Ethernet side of stuff. I'm going to go and crack on and do that. Now, in theory, they should all be set up and tagged and ready to plug into the Hatteras. I don't know how bond groups are going to act between cards because obviously bond group 27 is on card 1 and card 2, although it didn't let me add it on card 2, so maybe it's already seen that it's here. I don't know. I've never done this before. Well, I've never done anything like this before in this scale, so God knows if this is going to work. The next thing to do is connect the Hatteras boxes to see whether they come into sync, which pairs are broken, or which ports are broken, what I need to amend, how my mind is going to explode in the process, and fingers crossed they just all come up, and then I need to test every single one to make sure I get a DHCP address from the core, and assuming that works, we can then move on to programming all the Sharedband stuff. I thought this part wouldn't be too difficult. This seems to be the longest part of all of it, but I am having fun. So let's go and grab the Hatteras. Well, this is an epic site I never imagined I would have on my desk. There are 8 Hatteras boxes with 64 pairs of EFM SHDSL goodness going into them. Interestingly, this is only 8 pairs off of the 72 maximum that the Zyxel ADSL DSLAM can do, which is what I will end up terminating when I get to 5,000 subscribers. So if you want to see me go through this again, but on a bigger scale, subscribe. I think it's going to be chaos. Either way, it's actually been fun doing all of this. It's just been chaotic working out all the pair groups for this, because obviously they're in groups of 8 and they've moved around on the cards. Either way, all of these need to be configured. Now, interestingly, I bought one of these without a power supply, which was, I thought, this one. However, it turns out this one was the second one I bought, and what we'd used in previous testing before I'd bought all the others. Now, it doesn't matter what sequence it's in, but interestingly, bond group 3, which I think was bond group 27 on the Zhone, is in sync with 7 pairs. Pair 8 is missing, which is already a concern. It is trying to sync it and failing. So I hope that's not a sign of things to come, because if it is, it means we've got to move all of this around anyway, unless I just move that to the end of card 3 and just move a bond group around. I don't know. Either way, that needs sorting. All these need programming as well, which is why none of these are in sync. As I said, this is the one without the power supply. These only draw about 600 milliwatts each, milliamps even. So it's just jumped over the other power supply. They can do about 2.5 amps each, so that's fine. I was planning to time-lapse this, however, I completely forgot in setting all this up, and to be completely honest with you, these are an absolute nightmare to stack on the desk without falling over, especially with all the power cables that are on the left hand side pulling all of these. As I found out the other day when I had this group on my desk, when I was actually screwing in all the mounting brackets to put power supplies in, and they fell over and they acted like dominoes, and the end one decided to fall off the desk and onto my foot, which hurt. So yeah, that was interesting. Either way, I need to crack on and get all these programmed. Same config on all of them. We will go through and test them to make sure we're getting DHCP, or to be fair, we'll see what pairs don't come up first, then sort out all of that. Then we'll check for a DHCP from the core. Assuming all that's good, then we'll program the Sharedband stuff, and then we will test this absolute carnage that you can see in front of me and see what we get out of it. It would appear that that spectacle of illumination you may have just seen was completely short-lived. It turned out that I had still made patching errors on these crone strips, in that I had completely missed pairs. And the way this works is it will still sync, but because the bond groups on the latter end of the crone strips ended up going all over the place, they'll sync, but they'll be a part of different bond groups, so they won't bond properly. So you'll end up with a load of packet loss or timeouts or loads of different things that just cause absolute chaos. So we were fine up until about here. And then why are they all flashing? I have no idea. We then ended up with packet loss everywhere. And I tracked it down to the fact that I had literally just skipped over and missed some pairs. So there we go. Right, I'm going to go and finish patching this off again. All good. 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 Right, so the chaos of all of this seems to be well underway. All the Ethernet ports in this are talking back to the core. We're getting DHCP, not that it really matters, but I can't get out to the internet on any of these because the core is still configured for one-to-one mapping for all the external IP addresses going into the Sharedband boxes. Now, one thing I hadn't really taken into consideration is the sheer volume of cables that this was going to need, not only from a power perspective, but also from an Ethernet perspective. Granted, I have repurposed a load of cables for the EFM uplinks, or the SHDSL uplinks. I need 8 network cables going into the Sharedband boxes, and then 4 going out into the switch, and then my laptop will plug directly into the switch itself. Now, I came across this in the attic, which is a really, let's say clever, it is actually a clever cables device. I was given this years ago as part of a test, which didn't fare very well because there's nowhere to actually get rid of the slack, and I think this company went bust. Either way, I still have this. It's 8 Ethernet cables in one really nicely braided, braided really. So I'm going to use that to come from here into here. I then have a load of 1 meter network cables just off to the side for patching into the switch. Don't knock everything over. So we will patch all that into the switch. It's also dawned on me, we didn't try this above 4. I'm hoping 8 works. We never actually tested it, but I'm assuming it will, as the aggregator and knock took it. So this could be all for nothing. Either way, I'm going to crack on, get all of this sorted, and then jump onto the Sharedband boxes and start programming them. Yes, I've just realised I've plugged all of these into the craft port after realising that none of them are linking, which isn't what I was expecting. I have done that multiple times since setting all of this up, and you'd think I'd learn, but clearly not. Either way, that's relatively straightforward to move across, and we haven't ended up with a domino effect. And also, they're all linked. Fantastic. So this really is the moment for all of this. All of the Sharedband routers have been configured, I think, correctly. There were one or two that were part of a group that we were already using, which made that a little bit easier. And then we had the two before, the one that was already part of it, and then the other one which wasn't, so I've had to sort that out. I have no idea if this is going to work. The page I had from the knock earlier was just checking routers 1 and 2. Interestingly, 3 was showing online, but it was sharing the same IP address as one of the others, so there was an IP conflict. Also, I had none of the mapping in place on the MikroTik, which is what I've got set up here. So I've got one-to-one mapping for all the external IP addresses going to the static internal addresses, which is why all the Sharedband routers are set up with static addressing. Have all these rebooted, or in the process of rebooting. That one I think should now be on free, assuming I've configured that one correctly. 1, 2, I'm going to move you over there. 3, 4 should be up, which it is. Okay, so 1 is up, 2 is up, 3 isn't up. I'm fairly sure it was. The nice thing about Sharedband is it caches the pages, so you can go back through and look at what you typed in. It was right at the start for WAN on this, wasn't it? 172. Okay, I have given that the same IP address as another device. Right, I will be right back. We are back. I have no idea what all that was about. Plugging directly into it still didn't connect on .2, but using the VR IP address, I was able to log into it and it was showing .3. So I don't know why it didn't appear unless there was some ARP caching or something. I don't know. Either way, all 3 of them are now there. He says, let's see if 8 are connected. Now I could do this via the control panel. Now this is what I was looking at earlier, which was 1 and 2, which I knew were online. Let's refresh this page and see if we have 8. And we don't. In fact, we don't even have the others that I was expecting to be online. Odd. Let's just see what this thinks is going on. So it sees 8. Let's get it to diagnose what it thinks is going on. Okay, so according to this, these don't have active WANs, which makes no sense because they are configured. Connected to service, yes. Now that's connected indirectly. Now, okay, so in theory then we should see this on 1, which we are. I apologize for the plane going overhead. That is on 3, which is correct because it's 1 and 3, and this should be 2, which it is, so we know that's working. So is it the rules on the MikroTik that are causing this, or is something else going on? Now I tested all of these before I set all this up, and I was getting connectivity across everything, so everything should be working. And the fact that one of these routers is working, which is the top Hatteras where we only had 2, would seem to suggest that. I'm going to have to go another play. I know what the issue is, or part of it anyway. Line 4 isn't working because it can't see the internet. Hopefully that should be something trivial on the core. Lines 5 to 8 are seeing the internet. However, they're being stopped by this value here, number of lines set to 4. When we did our original testing the other day, I set this to 4 to make sure there was going to be no issues with 4-line bonding, and I didn't want it to be set to 8 in case it was going to cause an issue. So I set it to 4, saved it, which saved fine. I never changed it back, and all the certificates in the back end have failed again. I get the sneaking suspicion that there is another process that runs potentially weekly that also goes through and restores anything that it doesn't think is correct, which includes those certificates, because there was a process that was running every couple of minutes to do exactly the same thing. I now need to go through and redo everything I did the other day in the hope that I can get this back working again, so I can restore this to 8 and hopefully get all 8 working. I cannot believe I've got this far to get stumped by this. Hopefully I'll come back with some good news in a minute. Right, after a bit of messing around, it turned out that the certificate had actually deleted itself off of the aggregator. I don't know why. clearly there's another process or cleanup process that's running that stops it. For the minute, it doesn't matter. I have changed this account over to 8, which did actually save. Let's go back to here and see if this is now showing 8. Yes, it is. And they're all connected, with the exception of router number 4, which is clearly something on the microtik. I'm going to try and figure out what that is. However, in the grand scheme of things, hopefully that should be a little bit easier to try and work out what's going on there. And then I'll come back when they've all got ticks, hopefully, and then we'll run a speed test and just see what chaos ensues. There's the problem. Wrong subnet size. And I've been over this several times and have missed that. I've even changed the IP address. I've even changed external mapping and still nothing. I don't even know how I noticed that, to be completely honest with you. I knew it had to be something like that, because even after changing the IP address, and it was just not working full stop. But we will gloss over that. This is what happens when you do things like this. As I said earlier, if something doesn't seem right, it generally is. Check it. And check it. Although the patching was wrong several times. Don't listen to me. I'm hoping now, though, that these go green. And if these go green, then I can let this run all of its testing, and then we can test to see if this scales as I hope it will, should, maybe. I have no idea at the end of the day. Come on. Yes! Right. It's actually getting quite late into the evening. I haven't had lunch. I'm going to make you wait. I'm going to wait as well. I'm going to go and grab lunch. I'm going to go and get this to run all of its tests, because it's going to take a few minutes to run all of these. Not that it really matters in the grand scheme of things, because I could talk for that long. I'm going to get this to run all of its tests. Then we're going to set the laptop up to solely use this connection. And hopefully we will see a ridiculous speed test over this. In theory, that should be possible as well, because this is aggregated at 10 gig in the data center. So we shouldn't hit a bottleneck. Bottleneck? Back in a bit. Right, I have been fed. The Ethernet adapter has just been unplugged. Wireless is turned off, and it's showing we have a connection. Do we have a connection to the outside world? Let's have a look. We do. Now, there are so many variables with this. There are 64 bonded lines, effectively. There's also a load with the Sharedband side of stuff in terms of variables as well. I have no idea. Let's see if I've got the IP address that I should have, which from memory is 112.9. Okay, so let's load a new tab. Let's load whatismyipaddress.com. That loaded quite quickly. That is the correct IP address. Let's run a speed test and see how this ends up. Let's load Ookla. Now this is loading quite quickly, which if there was any type of packet loss issues, I would have expected this to have loaded a lot slower based on experience. That being said, this is all uncharted territory at this level. Let's see what we should be getting, and I would imagine around 320 meg symmetric. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we're getting 92. I can see all the lights on the switch flashing, all the lights on the Sharedband cluster flashing. So it's doing something. However, I get the sneaking suspicion we're running into a similar issue as we were the other day. However, all of those settings shouldn't have an effect on this, as far as I'm aware, because they are fixed. So let me go and have a play and let me see what happens. I have gone mobile for this one. The issue is actually the BNG, or we're using as the BNG. The right hand side of these ports are only fast Ethernet, and I'm pretty sure that it's this one here that is going back to the Zhone chassis. So we're going to have to move that over. That cable's not long enough to do that, which is probably why it's not in that port to begin with in the first place. So temporary cable required, and I need to move all the IP addresses. The port has been moved, the config has been moved, everything hopefully is now on a gigabit port. Let's clear that and run this and see what we end up with. I don't want you to go away. Oh, oh, this is absolutely incredible. The lights on the Hatteras boxes are going absolutely nuts. I will put a video up of that up on the screen in a minute, but that, I mean, the upload's not there. The download is, everything is correct on the Sharedband portal for this. I have gone through and checked that. There were 2 routers that didn't have their MTU values set properly, so that was corrected. The auto-diagnose with the power routers gets a little bit upset.
Motion detected at the front door.
And I have a delivery. Okay, that's something cool for maybe later on in the video. But for now, back to this. Yeah, everything is set up in here quite happily. Sharedband gets a little bit upset when you go to auto-diagnose because it sees things using the same IP address, which is correct for the power router because it only have one interface rather than multiple interfaces like you would do with individual ones, or the power router 2s that have the ability to bond multiple circuits on one device. I do remember having to ignore all of this on some setups with the power router 2, so that's fine. All of this is saying that apparently they're running different MTUs, and these are all running, or some are running DHCP. DHCP is turned off, I can assure you of that. And in respect to the MTU values, well, if you go in here, all of them are apparently missing. I had set that, which did reboot the routers. In fact, I guess I could get this to test this. A lot of these tests were a little bit flaky for memory. Some run, some didn't. I don't know why these haven't run. I mean, I'm guessing it could have been when they were disconnected. Either way, it will make a difference and it won't at the same time. The download's fine. But everything else that we were playing with previously is still the same. It's all fixed ratios. I might go and have a little bit of a tweak to see if I can get a little bit more out of it. But for now, I'm going to call that pretty much done, to be fair. The download is amazing with this. The download is lower than what we'd expect. There is some overhead with Sharedband. Also, this is going over my FTTP connection. That's why the upload's limited. The upload on the FTTP here is limited to 120 meg, so that would explain it. My other connection, the one I actually get sponsored through the channel through work, yeah, so we're in timeouts for this, and some of these were fine earlier and some are not. Anyway, the connection I actually have sponsored here, I've actually shifted to the house because uploading 4K videos now where they're 15 to 20 gig takes a fair amount of time on the OpenReach circuit. So I used a Truly circuit, which is layer 2 structured, to shift that up quite easily. So that is going to be the limitation for that. So I'm not going to be able to do anything about that unless I move the fiber circuits around, which I could, but it's not an easy job because the ONTs are installed in racks, or it's installed up here. The ONT got shifted down here. I'd have to move them around. I'd have to cut it. I'm going to get shouted at. That I'm calling good. This has been real fun, actually. I'm really tempted. No, I can't. Anyway, we're limited to that. I can't do anything else about it. I'm going to go and take some videos of all of this flashing away, also some nighttime shots as well with all of this flashing away. I'm going to post these up on the channel as well. I'll post them up in Discord, post them up on Patreon, even post them up on Instagram. This has been a labour of love, but it has been awesome in the process. Let's go and take some video of that. This just doesn't do this justice. This is absolutely incredible to be watching. All these flashing lights going in sequence is just ridiculous. This video has been so much fun. Now, as you can probably tell, I've had quite a bit of fun with all of this. This has taken so much longer than I had anticipated, and it's also a week late, for which I apologise. As a lot of regulars will know, I donate a fair amount of my time at the beginning, middle and end of the year to DJ for local schools for charity events, and this summer has been no different. I've been quite busy. That basically delayed this, in also making me realise how much hardware I needed for all of this and getting extra bits in, and eBay and shipping and so forth. It's just been difficult to get this done, but I'm so pleased I did. I mean, I never thought I'd have one of these, let alone 8. And to revisit the Sharedband platform again after all these years has really been fun. Granted, the Sharedband platform was very broken, and I'm in two minds. Sharedband is a fantastic platform. It does the job really well. It has come a long way since the original days where it was quite fiddly. Even this, there's still some quirks to it, but it does work. It's limited at 8 due to scale. I mean, the economics of bonding 8 lines, you get to that point and you start looking at something like EFM anyway, or even Ethernet lease lines. However, I am annoyed that I've had to go through all the hassle I have to fix the back end of this, despite the fact that we still paid licensing fees for everything. Now, that doesn't necessarily cover support, but you'd think it would from a maintenance point of view, given you're still paying to use the platform. And there was, well, they've always fixed stuff in the past. The problem is the platform is of a generation where it isn't really required so much anymore. But as I said, that being said, it does still work. You don't think you can buy it anymore, and ours is due to be decommissioned imminently anyway. So it was a really good way to send that platform off and play with it. Also, the leaning tower of EFM boxes, these brackets, they are slightly higher than the unit, and I tried to get all this on the desk so you could actually see everything. However, there is so much of it that just wasn't going to happen without everything sliding all over the place. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Now, depending on where this ends up, whether this ends up before me moving the ONT, spoiler, or after, I want to give a massive shout out to Better Internet. They have sent me a SFP that is a GPON module that would enable me to replace the OpenReach ONT with this, emulating its serial number. This deserves its own video in itself, and I will be unboxing this and doing a video in itself. It's actually turned up today, and it was quite funny because if I'd had this unboxed, then potentially I could have used this emulating the Adtran ONT and doing a video on that, rather than me having to go and get it. Spoiler, if I haven't already done that. Either way, there will be a video coming on this soon. They have sent it to me for free. I did offer to pay for posting. They didn't even do that. Well, they didn't even want me to pay for that. So a big shout out to Better Internet. I will link them in the video description, as we will go over this at some point in the future because it deserves its own video. Other people that I need to give a massive thank you to is Zen. As always, if it wasn't for Zen, this channel wouldn't exist. We're almost at 3,000 subscribers. I'm hoping when this video goes live that we break that 3,000 subscriber barrier. But I cannot thank Zen enough. They have enabled me to do so much. They gave me the additional line card I needed for the Zhone in order to do this crazy, ridiculous thing that I came up with. They've also been a massive supporter of the channel from day one in terms of hardware. I cannot thank them enough. If you are in the market for residential or business broadband, go and check out Zen. The link is in the video description. And as always, as I said earlier, I need to give a massive thank you to the Patreons. If it wasn't for the Patreons, then I wouldn't be able to do crazy stuff like this. I post behind the scenes videos on Patreon as well of me building all of this and messing around with it. So if you want to support me on Patreon, the link for that is also in the video description, along with Discord. Go and get involved in Discord. I've been posting about this on Discord as well. There's so much that goes on. I wish I had more time to focus on all of this. It's been a crazy wild ride, this video, and I've got so much more to edit. And on that note, if you guys are still here, I cannot thank you enough. Take care, and I'll see you in the next one. You're coming with me. You know I can't leave this only running at about 100 meg on the upload. I didn't go through all of this to get just the downstream. We need to see the upload as well. So I'm going to go and grab the Adtran ONT from the house, bring it down here, swap the fiber cables around to do that. It's layer 2, so it doesn't matter. It's on structures network, so I don't have to mess around with doing anything else other than surviving the raft of my kids and my wife while I disconnect that to borrow it, to bring it down here to run the test, to then put it back. Either way, come on a journey with me. Well, another one. I realise this isn't going to be the best footage for you lot because I haven't got a tripod to... Well, I've got a tripod, that's what I'm holding it on, but this isn't going to be the best stabilised footage in the world. So this is my home rack where everything resides, and this is the ONT that I need to put out. Now, interestingly, this kind of feeds on to what I got delivered today, and I'll talk about at the end of the video. Oh, I'm going to need the power for this as well, aren't I? This is all in the back. Right, first of all, let's pull out this fibre. Let's put a protective cover over that, and then let's drop in a cover on there, literally almost drop it. Unplug you, and go and take this down to the attic, and then swap over the feed that run to the shed. Did I just say take this to the attic? I'm in the attic. Take this to the shed, and then swap over the feeds that go to the shed. I think I got it right that time. Right, let's see if I can do this with everything in the way. That is the OpenReach feed that went to the shed, so I'll take that out and try not to touch it. Put dust cover on that. I can clean them if need be, and then let's take the Truly feed out of that side if I can get to it. Scratch the tip of that. What is this? That's not an APC connector on the other end. Oh, crying out loud. So we're going to want to take that off, and we're going to want to put that on you, and then we're going to want to put that on you, and then we're going to go and put you into you. Gosh, it seems so much easier in my head. Right, let's see if that's still 0 dB or whether it's now like -5 with a load of dirt. Right, this place is, well, A, it's ridiculously hot in here because of all of this. The AC is on, but not very much. I need to get up into that corner to take out the OpenReach ONT. So I'm going to go and do that now because there's no space for you lot in there and me. The amount of aggro I have gone through to get all this in, and are currently going through with being screamed and shouted at. I plan to get this back in as quickly as possible. Speed test, I haven't touched it. I don't know what this is going to do. It should now max out in both directions, or the upload at least should now match the download. Let's run it. Let's see what happens. Nothing's changed in this respect. We're still getting exactly what we should be. In fact, we're probably getting a bit more, or were we getting the same? I can't remember. No, I think we're getting about the same. Either way, as I said, there is a bit of trade-off and overhead with Sharedband. Plus, on this scale, I have, in fact, everything's fallen down on the desk while I've been out. This should exceed... Well, it's better. It's not great. Clearly, that... Oh, okay, we're getting there. We're getting there. My laptop has been unplugged for quite some time, so it's entirely possible it's just a load of Windows 11 background stuff going on. Let's rerun that test and see if we get anything higher. I should probably tell that to remember that, but right. So we're still getting the same, down the down again. Yeah, that is what it is. I think there's like a meg or two trade-off, and at this scale with 64 lines, it's probably about right. Let's see where the upload. There we go. Come on, come on, get over 200. 26, 25, 27. Come on, we're getting there. We're getting. It's not the full symmetric speed, but it's better than it was. Probably with a bit more tweaking in the background, I could probably get it there. But I am going to call this done. I'm going to jump back to my chair if I haven't already, or this might be after I've recorded everything in the chair. I don't know. Everything is out of sequence at this point because I wasn't planning to go and grab that other ONT and swap circuits around. Maybe I should get 2 truly circuits, although it's nice to have OpenReach because one's redundant network-wise, or fiber-wise to a degree. Maybe I should get another sponsor for another connection. Although that being said, I don't use it that much, especially for stuff like this. But of course, this is why this connection exists. So as always, I have to give a massive thank you to Structured, if I haven't already, for enabling me to do this crazy stuff. Anyway, right, I will see you soon. I'm going to go and chuck all this back in the house.